going to be talking about our sink or swim candidates for each NHL team. That is going to be in the Canadian division. Now, one thing to note about the Canadian division is that each of these teams are not just playoff hopefuls, but I think each one of these teams sees themselves in a normal division alignment.
Each?
Okay, not each. Sorry, Ottawa being a little bit of an after thought there. No disrespect for what they're doing. Think they're building really the right way, but 6 of the 7 Canadian teams.
Just real quick, you may notice the Canadians logo on my mug here. If Cam had a logo on his, it would be a Senators logo. So I just really quickly want to address that, no matter which team you're representing as a fan, we hope that this will be a podcast where you feel like it's represented well. It gets pretty tiring, I think, to, be listening to coverage of one form or another, and it feels like if, if it's not specifically tailored to your team, you feel like, maybe not always a fair representation. So we're going to give that our best go. If you feel like we haven't, feel free to let us know in the comments or whatever. But
yeah, this is going to be pretty intense, and so I think there's going to be some pretty fierce rivalries. I think there could be some disappointments in terms of playoffs, and I just really think that it's going to be fun to get into the sink or swim to see what can make the difference for each one of these teams coming up. But we're going to beeline it across highway number 1, right through Saskatchewan, to Winnipeg.
Yes.
Now, Winnipeg is a really interesting team. It's had some really recent post-season success. It doesn't feel like it. Mm-hmm. They've had some really recent roster implosion, and it does feel like that right now. And I think Chevy's doing a really good job doing with what he can, considering Winnipeg's not necessarily a free agent destination by any means. I respect that with the amount of assets that he has, that he's in the place where he is. Mm-hmm. Neil Pionk had a really tidy year, being a no-name return for
I love
Trouba. So Jets fans, I think you can really trust Cheveldayoff. I think you know that. Especially considering there's other rumors that are swirling, but we might not get to that. But we're gonna, or we could. Yeah, we will. Give me your sink or swim candidate, or just tee up what your feel is in Winnipeg.
Nice little ad there. Thanks. Hockey reference for that. Okay, so I'm not gonna get to line A right now, but
fair.
It has to come up. I want to say that for the Jets, the problems people talk about aren't as big as public perception of them seems to be, I think.
Okay.
So I would say that includes some things like the Liney situation. I guess I will mention it.
Yeah.
I think that whether he moves or stays, Chevy's gonna do his job. Yeah. And they're gonna be fine.
Yeah, and he's done a really tidy job. Mm-hmm.
So I'm not worried about that. I'm not worried about
ads everywhere. You're not worried about
it? I'm not worried about anything in their forward group. I just don't think that. I think the talent level is high enough and the depth level is high enough that their margin for error at forward is so large that I don't think there's ever any. And on defense, I think that as long as Nathan Beaulieu almost never touches the ice, they're going to be just fine.
I would contend that he is done well for what he's been asked to do in Winnipeg. I just would say don't ask him to do too much more. I feel like there's a bit of resentment now that you've exposed your fandom to everybody here. I don't know.
I would say I have a large sample size.
Okay, that's fair. Well, if we want to go down, or I accused you of resentment, I'll be honest. Going back to Edmonton, seeing Alex Chiasson still playing in the league. He's an NHL player. I'm sure he's a great guy, no disrespect, but as a Sens fan, when that's pretty much the memorable return for Jason Spezza, so it's tough not to, you kind of maybe see what you want to see a little bit. So
my evaluation of Bolu is connected to, I think that the defense last year didn't get as exposed as it should have and deserved to be. I think that their team defense and defensive core was AHL level on a lot of nights.
Whoa.
I think the bottom three on their defense, like if you look at Bolu, Forbert, they're just those two. But they didn't get small minutes. They had real minutes. Forbert's the new guy, right?
Forbert's new.
Who am I thinking of who's on their third pair? He's a bigger guy.
Typically Kulikov, I don't know.
Spisa got some ice time.
Pullman
I'm okay with, but they had terrible players on that defensive unit, and they got...
It was a committee, for sure.
Well, Hellebuck really hid how bad things could have been in Winnipeg.
He led the league in high danger chances against and high danger save percentage.
And that leads very nicely into where I'm going to go with this.
Clearly events no win there. Oh, obviously.
Absolutely. No question.
Undisputed.
Yeah. One of the most impressive seasons I've seen in so long.
Yeah.
I see Winnipeg being in my rankings in the range, I would say somewhere from 2 to 7.
Okay.
Because Jets fans, I'm going to say this now, don't expect a similar season from Hellebuck this year. That doesn't mean that...
It'd be nice to aim low, maybe avoid disappointment a little bit.
I think just be realistic.
Yeah.
So earlier, you might be just watching this clip, but if you're watching the full episode, then you'll know what I'm referencing here. I was talking about Gaudreau, and how I'm not saying that Hellebuck is less good of a goalie than he was last year,
right.
Or that he's going to regress in his abilities. But I don't have the numbers to back this up, but I can say without fear of contradiction that when goalies have a massive workload, their quality of play goes down.
Yeah.
And goalies have to play 60 minutes a night. Focus and just your mental state of mind is so important for a goalie, and fatigue affects goalies so much. Just in terms of amount of games he's played, but the amount of chances, the amount of on time Hellebuck has had in the last stretch is in a different stratosphere compared to the rest of the league.
True.
And that is going to catch up to him, and goalies just don't have consecutive seasons like what he had. Unless if you go back to maybe a Dominic Hasek, you'll see a guy who just put up numbers like that multiple years in a row.
That one of the best players of all time. I love him. Yeah. But how many months off though? Maybe.
I was gonna say that's the only reason I think he's not gonna have a bad year.
Yeah.
Because of the amount of time off.
Yeah.
That's the only thing. And again, no disrespect to him, but he is not going to be able to put up what he did last year because it's not like he's getting this, large amount of time off and then having a regular paced season. Yeah. It's a compressed schedule, and is it Brossoit backing him up?
Yes.
He's a pretty good backup. He's decent.
I think he's fine. Side note, just like at the beginning of the year, I think Winnipeg fans got a little too excited here. Brossoit had a really strong start to the season. Yeah. And we're talking Rittich regressing throughout the year. Brossoit had some struggles where he almost wasn't playable a lot of nights, and Hellebuck just proved how good he was and able to shoulder all the workload. But there was like a goalie controversy for first few games of the season. Now a lot of people maybe will choose not to remember this, but like there was literal pundits on talk radio in Winnipeg that Brossoit might take the job from Hellebuck.
Yeah.
I think they are going to really wish that that first few games that Brossoit played is who he's going to be in this condensed season.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be really important. But yeah, like I'm not saying there was very much legitimacy to that. The same exact thing happened in Toronto. Jack Campbell came in. He won 2 games, and there were some people on morning shows trying to be like, is this a goalie controversy? And some people were really good at stopping that right where in its tracks, and some people would entertain it more. I guess, you're trying to come up with topics and stuff like that. But Brossoit did have a good start to the season last year, and I think he needs to really sustain that. He says he wants to be the best goalie in the league. So he's got someone to model that from, at least. It's a hot take. You want a goalie, I guess, with an attitude like that. But
yeah. So I am not disrespecting Hellebuck when I say this. It's just a fact that goalies can't do that every year. So he is going to have a worse season than last year.
Okay.
It's just a matter of how much worse. I would be because of the amount of time off, I don't think it'll be that much worse. And again, I'm not saying he's going to be a worse goalie. There's a difference. But he was insane last year. And that's just not sustainable. Like, you can't count on that. So I would anticipate him being one of the best, still above average in the division. But he is not going to be able to steal the amount of games he did and cover the amount of egregious, terrible defensive play. So it's good that the Jets have made, I think, a lot of ground in improving the overall quality of their defensive core with some of the kids that are coming in. I'm really excited about.
Could you name a few?
I'm having a brain freeze, but the Finnish guy they drafted.
Last year? Like the defenseman, Heinola.
I love him.
Great player.
And then who is it?
We'll see him soon.
It's not Niku on the left side, who everyone's talking about.
Sandberg.
I love Sandberg's game.
I agree. Back-to-back champs, national champs at Minnesota Duluth. And they were going up against some stacked teams like University of North Dakota, who I would watch a lot because there's a ton of Sens prospects who have played and are playing UND. So you see a guy like Sandberg has been a real stalwart. Not just to say he's a defensive-only defenseman, but
that's on the Jets.
Quality player.
That would be okay. So I think that their forward group, no questions. Their defensive group, the floor went up so much. That's why I think there's no reason that Bolo should touch the ice. If he is, there's a problem. And because I'd way rather have Niku get ice time over Bolu.
Well, okay. So I would probably lean towards Bolu because of this. So Sami Niku, he was AHL Calder. Or sorry, not the Calder is the trophy, but he was the Rookie of the Year in the AHL a few seasons ago. Obviously a lot of hype there, 7th round pick. And so it's like diamond in the rough kind of attitude. I'm okay with Beaulieu playing because if you look at Sami Niku's heat maps, they are the exact opposite of what you'd want for a player. So essentially how heat maps work is, red is really good in the offensive zone. That means that you're converting a lot of your chances offensively, that you're a big threat. And blue in the defensive zone is really good because that means that there's not that there's not any goals, right, or the opportunities are really being thwarted there. So that's really good. Now, Sami Niku's heat map's pretty much the exact opposite of what you'd want to see. His entire defensive end is red. Like, there's almost no blue, right? Like, when he is on the ice, I'm not saying it's only him, he could, in some sense, be a victim, but, like, his defensive play is not good, and he's not contributing offensively. It's blue, it's cold. Mm-hmm. So, again, like, it's really tough because it's pretty much the archetype of what you don't want to see on either end for a defenseman. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I think he's got a pretty risk-free contract one way, and I'm pulling for him. I think he's a good player, or he can develop into a good player, but he's really not giving Paul Maurice reason to put him on the ice. Yeah. So that would be my only rebuttal to what you're saying.
I have two conflicting thoughts on Niku. One is a guy who I know he's a bit controversial, but I really like him, Craig Button. I heard
he comes in hot, which at least lately, which is fun.
And he loves some Habs prospects. Yeah, he will not stop talking about Romanov and Coffey. So I have to support him just because. Anyways, he said that if Niku was waived, he doesn't know if anyone would pick him up.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
Which was I was listening to Jets radio, and the hosts were like, "Buh." They were just flabbergasted. Yeah. So that's perception of Niku around the league, but there's something to be said for a guy who is like committed and determined and like I think desperate. And Niku is one of just a couple Jets who are living and training in Winnipeg during this whole off season. Yeah. And I think this is his last stand for his career.
Okay.
In terms of like making it for real.
Sure.
I think if he's going to make it for real, it's got to be this year, whether on the Jets or not.
You know what? You're coming in hot. Like Button would be proud of you. I'm good with it.
Like I mean, in terms of not being a journeyman, in terms of a guy who is a real.
Okay.
I think if you don't show that by the time you're 24, 25. I think you'd be worried as a player, as a you know.
Okay.
I think he's going to be just on a mission. Yeah. And I don't think he steals a top 6 job out of the camp, but I think he comes in as the 7th defenseman.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's also in terms of what is to gain from playing Nathan Beaulieu. It's not like he's a guy who is a rock on the third pair who's So I feel like I'm talking about really insignificant players a lot. but for me, the sink or swim guy is Hellebuyck because he is statistically going to be worse this season. Yeah. And if he's not, I will make a public social media post saying that Hellebuyck is better than Carey Price.
Whoa.
Which would be very difficult for me.
Okay.
But that's like I'm extremely confident he's going to have a worse season. It's a matter of how much worse. Okay. So if it's only a little bit worse, I see them finishing kind of near, like they could be 2-3. Yeah. If it's a lot worse, think of the ripple effects of these kids coming in who are going to be basically rookies. True. If not actual rookies on defense. You have new additions and you have a goalie who's and it's not like Brissois is a rock you know what I mean? Yeah. So I think if Hellebuyck struggles, the wheels fall off for the Jets. I don't think that's likely, but no, I recognize that there's a chance. Yeah, I agree. And we mentioned high danger before, which I think says a lot about what the Jets defense was capable of preventing. Totally fair. And interestingly, I felt like you were, to put you on the spot,
initially going to come up with a different sink or swim candidate, and I thought I was going to have some rebuttals to that. What were you just entertaining? Maybe what changed your mind?
So I shared with you a couple weeks ago that a player who I believe is on the downturn of their career and isn't capable of what they were 2-3 years ago is Blake Wheeler. That is not to disrespect him, but I don't think he's a 90-point player anymore. I think he's probably so it's weird because I don't know how long the season's going to be, but if it was an 82-game season, I think he's probably comes in at 75 to 80 points.
Yeah.
Which is very good.
I agree.
But it's not 92.
No.
And he did that 2 years in a row.
Yeah.
And I don't think he's that player anymore. And I think he still gets talked about that way. But I don't think he's ever going to touch even high 80s again.
Okay. Well, I suppose Jets fans are going to want Wheeler to prove you wrong.
And me too, because I love him.
Yeah.
I love the power forward who is primarily a creator.
Yeah.
I love those players like Joe Thornton, like Ryan Getzlaff.
Yeah.
Like, please just Barry Konkaniemi. But Blake Wheeler, like even vintage Kyle Okposo.
Whoa. Digging deep for like memories of positive Kyle Okposo, who was a player
on the Islanders.
Yeah.
And I know that so well because he was a key contributor to my fantasy hockey team, who was the first of my back-to-back league championships. I've never not been league champion, so let that be known.
I'm sure our fans are really interested in our fantasy hockey.
Well, they should be.
Well, you know what? We might have something neat with involving card hockey packs and fantasy hockey, where it might have a versus square off. So we'll see if you live up to your unblemished title.
It's very neat, though, that in coming up with that idea, you have really brought in the element of chance and eliminated the element of insight and strategy.
All right. Okay.
Because you may have been in the league for one of the years where I was champion. And you may have had a tough loss.
May have been both, and I may have been second both times. So whatever, it's fine.
But all that to say that I love Blake Wheeler.
Yeah.
And I don't think he's a bad player.
I feel the same way about. I feel like this year is the year I have to get off the soapbox for banging the drum that I thought Sidney Crosby is the best center in the league. I think for a lot of the same reasons. It's simply his game has changed. I still think he's just one of the most complete players. I was really contending for him to stay at number one center for the last few years, even though Connor McDavid is clearly on another echelon. I just thought what Crosby was able to accomplish on every facet of his game, even though he didn't have that wow speed or things like that, there was just a lot of things he could do, and I got to put that to bed this year and just acknowledge Connor McDavid would be number one. Glad Nathan McKinnon's blossomed the player that he is. He's getting the clout, right? So it feels like we're bridging back to some of those teams there. Yeah. But can I go with my sacred means? Actually, you know what? I wanted you to bring up Wheeler for a reason, because I did some homework, because that's kind of where I expected you to go. And I just wanted to say that I think Wheeler, he'll be all right. One of the things Paul Maurice said on the Ray and Dregs podcast when he was returning there a couple weeks or months ago was that Blake Wheeler was an absolute freak when it came to fitness. Like, he was always the best shape, and so I think like the way that he takes care of himself and the drive that he has internally, right? Like, you go, it's really hard to develop those things. Those are almost like things that, right, like they come from within inside you. You can't get that motivation always externally, and so he's going to bring that. Who I also thought was really interesting that Paul Maurice included in that list of players who are absolute freaks were Jack Roslovic. So I really like that. I think a really good scenario would be if there was Stastny to now Roslovic was a center during a lot of his time, at least when he was playing his you could call it junior hockey, college hockey. And so they saw him a lot more as a center, and it was even purported when they're coming out of camp and there was like Vesalainen was drafted, and everyone was expecting he was going to wow the pundits the most at the Jets prospect camp, and everyone was saying Jack Roslovic looks like he's on another level. Now he hasn't quite been able to put that together. His face-offs don't look good, but I think he's pretty talented. I think I would like to see him have a really tidy season, I guess maybe personally, and I think that could be a really nice graduation from if they could go Stastny at the 2C this year, and then if Roslovic can maybe play in that 2C for a little bit this year and next year and have Perfetti graduate in, that I think okay, we're getting ahead of ourselves here, but if Stastny is going to help Laine re-sign on for a couple more years, and then a Perfetti ends up growing into the 2C, right? This is a guy who's been equated to Panarin in terms of vision, right, by your friend Craig Button. And so if you've got a guy who plays in the middle of the ice and has that passing pedigree as Laine, so I just wanted to say I think that's a really good vision for the Jets. Now again, his center numbers don't look great. He might be stuck on the wing. He might be stuck on the third line, but he's a guy I'm pulling for, and he has the work ethic to make it happen. So that's more of an intangible thing than a statistical thing. But that's just something that I wanted to bring up because, you know what, I even just put some stats for Roslovic that I thought were interesting. His career PDO is 101.5. So that's pretty good. So he's clearly contributing more offensively than he is liable for on defensive. But when you put that in context, career offensive zone starts 56.4%, and then but if you look at his career Corsi 4 or relative Corsi, he's got 1.4. Again, right? Positive numbers, positive integers are good.
So keep in mind that PDO is with Hellebuck in net.
That's true. Yeah.
And I've also heard some people say that PDO is sometimes looked at as like a luck metric. Sometimes.
Yeah, that's fair.
In that shooting percentage can also be a luck metric. Sometimes you have guys on the Jets who bust that Scheifele. If someone isolated a Scheifele season, they'd be like, okay, he's going to regress, but he doesn't, because that's just who he is.
Yeah.
But I guess that's just kind of an aside. But interesting picture for sure. He didn't have a very good year.
No.
And he had some decent. He was on the ice almost 15 minutes a night.
Yeah.
That's not a small amount of time.
No.
That's to me right in middle, upper middle six.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if he's gonna show it, he's sort of in Nico territory, where if he's gonna show it, it's gotta kind of be this year.
Okay. I'm pulling for him again as just someone, because I knew you had been entertaining the idea of Blake Wheeler. I wanted to just segue to talking a little bit that I like Roslovic personally. There's a lot more pieces to like, especially down the middle. There's Kopp, Lowry. Jets fans, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that Perreault is one of your favorites out there. He's got incredible ethic and drive on the ice. I think sometimes his hockey IQ or his drive to forecheck or to make plays can sometimes not always work out, but no player's perfect. So I know there's lots to love about the Jets, and so that's just someone who I'd like to see take a step this year. For the Jets, it'll do so much extra for them considering the parity of this position. But yeah, again, picking him as a sink or swim candidate, I don't think is appropriate. I think actually it's interesting. There's a defenseman on the Jets you didn't talk about at all, not once, and that's my sink or swim candidate. And
your boy from the Senators?
Yes. So Paul Maurice referred to this player as coach's adult film. I'm not going to say the actual quote, but he just loved watching Dylan DeMello play. I think Pierre Dorion has done a really good job with a lot of the moves, have worked out really well for him, but I think he sold a bit low on Dylan DeMello. He was playing so incredibly well with Shabbat, had just great underlying numbers. And I think that Dorion just got jumpy, that he didn't want to get without a trade partner, because we saw Marco Scandella get traded for a second, and I would...
Second and a fourth, and
I would contend Dylan DeMello is more of a player, for sure. But, so I think Dylan DeMello is the sink or swim candidate.
Wow.
He's going to be asked to be in that 3-4C position, so...
3-4D?
D, sorry. Yeah, alphabet is hard. C. Yeah, oh man, that would make a real big difference to the Jets season. 3-4D position. And again, like, he's had some great underlying numbers, but when you look at the Jets D, there's not very much depth there. There's players who've played NHL games, but I think that's different than legitimate depth. And I think that DeMello's going to really be leaned on to kind of be an answer to just quell a lot of the high danger chances that the Jets were up against. And I think he can do a job of that, especially considering he was paired with Shabbat for a lot of last season and the year before, where Shabbat's a really offensively minded player and DeMello was able to do a tidy job in his back end. But they're kind of, I get a sense that they're putting kind of a lot of weight on, well, this is a solution. And one thing that I think is worth pointing out is that in his whole career, he's only had one season where he's been able to play over 70 games. So there could be a bit of a, now you could say, well, it's a shortened season, they might only play 60 games. Sure, but right, if this guy is having some issues maybe with injuries, maybe the time off will be good, but I think Dylan DeMello being A, healthy, and B, seriously fitting into this scheme, which at first it seems like, I think that's going to be really important, because if Dylan DeMello goes down or any other defenseman in that top four goes down, I think it gets thin really quick. Again, we like guys like Sandberg. I mentioned some of the detractors about Niku. You mentioned about Bolya. I've seen Logan Stanley play live multiple times. He seemed like the ideal archetype for what the Jets D used to be. Huge, Bufflin, 300-pound, right? Like 6'5", 6'6" defenseman. Tyler Myers, 6'7" defenseman. Logan Stanley, 6'7". Seemed like a great succession, but his skating.
Ben Sherrod.
Listen, I give Logan Stanley a lot of credit for getting to where he's gotten in his career, but he doesn't have quite the wheels to stay at an AHL level, or at least dominate an AHL level. He seems like he's getting beat a lot at that level, and there's a lot of youth and a lot of quickness there, but the NHL's quick too. You more quicker, especially with a lot of teams who are converting to a high octane offense, right? We've talked about Vancouver and Toronto are going to be here, and so I think Stanley, right? Like, it gets thin really quick, and so that's why for me, Dylan DeMello has got to be that player who stays healthy, and he's got to be that top four that the Jets are hoping he will be, or else everything we talked about, your candidate Hellebuck having issues or experiences with that what I'm struggling to just say here is that like Dylan DeMello, I think, will help solve a lot of the issues,
right.
Or he'll be a really complement to Hellebuck being able to sustain his own success.
If things are stable, then it'll be a much lighter workload for the goalies. And how huge would that be? Yeah. Something that just crossed my mind that'd be very interesting. I am not comparing Hellebuck to James Reimer in any way except for the fact that James Reimer was kind of famously a guy who had a lot more success when he was facing a lot of pucks. What happens if the Jets' defense becomes incredible? Right. And Hellebuck doesn't get the touches he's used to and his mind isn't staying in? Yeah. That'd be crazy. Yeah. Interesting. I don't think that'll happen, but that'd be wild. Yeah. That'd be really kind of scared to continue on that. So, did you want to say anything about Patrick Laine? Or? Well, I just think that I think it's still going to happen. Okay. Like him being dealt. Mm-hmm. I read something yesterday. It was a quote from, I think it was LeBrun. It might have been Friedman, but I feel comfortable with it being either of those two guys. Yeah. And what they were saying is that the issue is not who the second line center is. It's the fact he'll be playing with a second line center. The fact he's stuck on the second line, that's hindering his development. So that's interesting because last year Wheeler was like filling in at center a lot, right? Like he was getting a lot of second line minutes, and so Laine was able to play up. Yeah. On that top line, and like if you look at the most common line mates last year, Laine was very consistently playing with Scheifele on the top line. And maybe he's looking at this year and saying, I don't want to play with Stastny. I want to be the number one right winger. Yeah. So it's good to have that drive. Yeah. So as of October 15th, whether it was LeBrun or Friedman, they were saying that that the belief was, this was from Laine's agent, the belief was that both Laine and the team view it would be good to part ways. Interesting. So very interesting. I still think that's on the table, and I would say likely. Yeah. It just keeps making me think like, man, what if the Jets could have gotten Nate Schmidt? He could play with like if Morrissey goes down with an injury, he can play top lefty. Yeah. If Morrissey's healthy, he can be an ironclad top pair with him. Yeah. He can play second line, second pairing D, and really stabilize things for Pionk. Yeah. Wow, would that be huge? Yeah. Who knows if he was on their no trade? If they were on his no trade list, I would maybe guess. I don't think Jets fans would be too offended. Yeah. We live in Manitoba, and I can see. I walked my dog in minus 19 this morning. Yeah. So I would get it in November. In November. But man, what he would have done for this team, and then also what he would have done for this team, because if you're trading Patrick Laine, you are no longer forced into a certain kind of player. You can go out and get the best package for Patrick Laine because you don't have the same desperate need to fill. You know what I mean? Great point. That would be huge. So great point. I do kind of still think it's going to happen, but but I think the Jets are going to be fine either way. I've got a few theories. I think Philly can do anything. I think that they've got the depth where they can give up a lot of great assets and still be a good team on either the forward or defense, whatever Winnipeg wants. I think that they could get something realistic done. They've got a lot of good prospects. They've got picks. So I could see that. I think LA is another team that's absolutely loaded when it comes to who they're able to ascertain. Yeah. Right? They've got a lot of pieces, great prospects, can go on and on. And just a side note, imagining Byfield in those reverse retros, just it's so pretty. So I really hope he turns out as a Sens fan. I'm really happy with Stützle. I like him. He's been compared to Kane at different points.
And so that's pretty high praise. We'll see how it goes. Hopefully he recovers well from injury. But I really like the upside of Byfield. I think also, like I said, I was kind of teeing this up earlier when I said I'm a fan of things that grow the game. And having, a black player being one of the marquee faces for a team in LA, I think that's going to be incredible. We're seeing guys, Demko, right, is a guy playing out of California, Austin Matthews, all these guys in Canada come from almost obscure states, right? And so I think we're going to see more and more of that occurring.
Especially with the huge movement. Like there's the Hockey Diversity Alliance, which is really getting a lot of attention, a lot of positive attention. And it just seems like the climate is really good right now for to have an ambassador, a hockey ambassador to the States, like a guy who is a minority who is really high profile draft pick for the team, and just who knows what kid in LA who maybe is a minority or something is gonna see him on a billboard around town or whatever and be like, hey, maybe that game's for me.
It's about enfranchising players, not just players. It's about enfranchising people and people groups, and I think Byfield will do an excellent job of that. Florida's hired an assistant GM who, by all accounts, they're not hiring or drafting people based on appealing to minorities, but these people have deserved the jobs that they get, and it's really cool to see this portion of the game develop, and we're really excited to just see hockey grow, and like I said, I'm a fan of growing the game, and so that's why. And a little aside about
lining on Byfield's wing,
that'd be pretty cool.
Insane.
Jets fans, however, don't hear that. No, sorry, Jets fans. But yeah, I guess just the one thing that's going to be really interesting with the Canadian division is, can people trade across the border when these things happen? Will there have to be a 2-week
there'd have to be
quarantine period? If you trade for a guy at the deadline, what if you only got him for, I don't know, 6-7 games? And we're talking about 60 games, so if how much more games are you getting lost percentage-wise by being able to trade across the border? It's going to be really interesting. So that might be. I think we're going to see Patrick Laine be a Jet throughout the duration of this season.
He's an RFA, right?
He'll be an RFA, with ARB rights. And so I think we'll see him remain a Jet, but that is something to keep your eye on, I think, as a storyline, is how are these transactions going to work, right? Playing across the border. Really interesting stuff to think about.
I think best case scenario is Laine just steals that top line right wing job right out of camp.
Yeah, I like it.
That'd be so amazing for the Jets, I think.
One thing that, I don't know, maybe I'm off by saying this, but if we look over at Toronto, they've got some offensive. They've got 4 first line forwards, right? And so that's a bit of a math problem. And I think the Jets are in a similar position where they've got 4 first line forwards. Let's put some respect on Kyle Connor's name. This guy is an absolute machine. Also one of the freaks that Paul Maurice pointed out in that interview I addressed earlier. And so I feel like if you can kind of get Laine to look at Toronto and be like, you know what, sometimes you'll be the first line, sometimes you'll be the second line, and that's just the way it is, because it is good for the team and our chances of winning if we build or if we carve out the roles, we accept our roles, understand that they're going to change for the good, and they're going to change for not even the bad, not that being on the second line's bad at all. You might be able to exploit some great matchups, right?
Yeah.
But I think Laine would have a bit of a benefit if he was friends with anyone on the Leafs team, where it's like, right, JT, Matthews, Nylander, Marner, like they've got 4 incredibly good players, and none of them want to leave. So that's a really good thing, at least as of now. And so I think that's a really good thing, and can Laine adopt that same mentality while still having that drive to be the best, and just accept, sometimes I'm going to be on the second line, sometimes I'm going to be on the first line.
I think that the Jets don't have the 1 through 4. The 1 through 4 talent, like of their top 4 forwards, isn't as high, but I think the Jets have 5 first line forwards.
Ooh.
Because to me,
would you put Ehlers in there?
Yeah.
Okay.
To me, he's underrated.
I didn't want to seem too generous. Yeah. And maybe that's not fair, but I really like Ehlers as well. I think he's up there.
Incredible.
I think he's up there.
He reminds me, his skill set is different.
Yeah.
But he reminds me of Brendan Gallagher in a way that Brendan Gallagher he's a first liner.
Yeah.
But you can't tell that. If you just took maybe a bare stat line, you'd say, well, this guy's probably a really good, like a luxury second liner.
Yeah.
But Ehlers, just like Gallagher, brings so much to the game.
Yeah.
Just like his speed, his play driving, his like zone entries. Man, I think he's incredible. So I see them having 5, so maybe that's a perspective like Patrick, look around, look what we're asking this guy to do and that guy to do. And what you practice with them, what these guys are capable of. This is just something we're asking of a lot of you guys is to take a role that, But that said, I think he could earn the top line right wing spot and solve all Winnipeg's problems, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I like to see it. I think Jets fans deserve a little bit of success here as well, and I think their management and team has done an excellent job to get into this position, considering what they have, considering their tax situation or their destination. I'd love to see it. So we are going to take just a short little break. We're going to come back and we're going to segue from one Danish player on a Canadian team, cross the traditional Western to Eastern Conference, and focus on another team with another Danish player in Toronto. So we're going to back to you after the break.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Frederick Anderson.
Okay.